Welcome to Creative Conversations. I'm Roger Humphrey. In this episode, I'm pleased to welcome portrait and wedding photographer Andrejka Hirsch. I should mention that Andrejka and I have worked many events together, and I've come to regard her photos as some of the best I've ever seen. Before we start, please hit the subscribe and follow buttons. It's a little thing on your part, but for me, it really helps out a lot. Thank you. And we are welcoming Andrejka Hirsch to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, it's so great to see you
And
again.
you're all the way from Bali today. Wow, what
Yeah.
a that's
Yes.
that's quite a hike. So so
It's
I
about the
I,
farthest you can get from where you are.
I was going to say if you go any further, you start coming back.
True. Exactly true.
So how did you end up in Bali? I've got to ask, how did you end up in Bali? What's going on there?
Well, my first time in Bali was 2016, and it was because a friend of mine was literally, if you know the movie Eat, Pray, Love,
Yeah.
it takes place in Bali, and she was Eat, Pray, Loving her life, and she wanted someone to go, and I went, okay. I don't even know where Bali is. And I remember looking at a globe, and it was like this big, gigantic globe that my friend had at her house. And her little 4-year-old was like, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going here." And I remember turning the globe and turning the globe and turning the globe and turning the globe and going, "Where am I going? What did I go to?" I'm going to the tiniest little island that is about as far away from where I am right now than you could be. And this was 2016 before a lot of people, I mean, people knew Bali, but people weren't traveling to Bali like they are now.
Uh-huh.
And then in 2019, I went and did a retreat with a musician based out of San Francisco, him and his wife named Michael Franti, at their house, their hotel, because they have a hotel here in Bali. And when I went, it was awesome. It was great. I got to meet some great people, and it was kind of like a music slash fitness slash yoga slash see and experience Bali retreat, which was awesome. And through there, I got to know him and his wife a little better. And Sarah, his wife, a few months later, hired me to do some photo work. So at that point, we kind of became more friends. Well, then when after COVID, Mackinac Island's wedding season during COVID was actually kind of busy. And it was November 2020. And I'm like, I always travel. Like for the last 6 years, November was my month abroad. And it was just like eating me up. Like, where can I go? Where can I go? Where can I go? And I was talking to her and she's like, come to Bali. And I was like, can I do that? She's like, yeah, come stay at the hotel. We've got this great deal, this great long-term stay deal. And I was like, I'm going to go to Bali for a few weeks. And she's like, well, if you're coming for a few weeks, I mean, if you're paying for the visa and you're flying across the world in the middle of a world pandemic, I want to stay a little longer. So at least stay till Christmas. I'm like, okay, I'll stay for 6 weeks, which I was like, oh my gosh, this is a long trip. And day three, first off, I get to the hotel and I'm sitting there with Michael and Sarah, and they're like, let's have dinner at the restaurant. I said, okay. So we're at the restaurant. And I said, so who else is here? And they're like, just you. So I'm okay. So I am living at a hotel in Bali, Indonesia, with one of my favorite musicians in the entire world, his wife and his 4-year-old, 2-year-old at the time. Um, this is going to be interesting. Then day four, we're sitting around. I'll never forget it. We're having pizza at some pizza place, the one of the only pizza places open that time. And they look at me, they're like, you're staying longer than Christmas. I'm like, no, no, I'm not staying longer. That's 6 weeks. That's plenty. I call my mom 2 days later. I'm like, Mom, I'm going to miss Christmas. And 6 weeks turned to 6 months. Every
Wow.
month my visa would be up for renewal. And every month I'd say, bye guys, I'm leaving. And then a week before I'd be like, never mind, I extended my visa. Never mind, I extended my visa. And that turned into 2020 was my 6-month winter in Bali. And at that point, I kind of realized I could assess and reassess how my business ran. And then the next year I had to come back. And last year I spent 7 months. And this year I'm here for 6. So this will be my 4th winter.
Wow. Now, do you have
Yeah,
your own place now, or you're still at the
I do.
resort? Okay.
Yes. Unfortunately, fortunately, COVID is no longer a thing in Bali and the borders are open. So now hotel prices are back to normal hotel prices, and you can't just live at a 5-star resort for the cost of nothing. Tourists are actually going to go fill those rooms now, not just little old me. So I now have a sweet, cute little villa in a town called Canggu that I have for the 6 months. So I have my own place, which is kind of nice to be a little normal and not just live at a hotel.
Sure.
Although I do love living at a hotel.
So, are you doing any weddings over the winter?
I get asked that question all the time because Bali, it's so beautiful. You must get so many beautiful weddings, but I don't. I work so much in the summer when doing like 100 shoots in 4 months that
Wow.
anything I do in the winter, I just want to be fun. I want it to be fun, no pressure. There's so much pressure with the photography of weddings and portraits and clients and pleasing that anything I shoot in this time of year is free or for barter. And I kind of made this pact to myself 4 years ago. And I sit here and I have my camera equipment sitting there and I literally haven't touched it in a month. But I made this pact my month ago years ago. And then I realized actually it would be technically illegal for me to do it without a certain visa.
Oh, yeah.
And also, the clientele here isn't my ideal clientele. Like Bali is beautiful. It's also filled with influencers and Instagram people and models and
Oh,
people who had literally get branding photo shoots and pictures of themselves done monthly. And I love photographing people who are uncomfortable in front of the camera. That's my favorite thing. Like I come to find that I'll do these meetups just for fun, and there'll be a bunch of people there. They'll have like 5 photographers and 5 models, and they're always doing this. I literally said to one of them, or else I do this one, and it's these like dead eyes, and I'm like, can you smile? Like I'm sitting there trying to like get them to loosen up, but no matter what, they always go to the same side, and I'm like, nope, not my jam. Give me the people who are uncomfortable, who want to relax and have fun, and their favorite photo is going to be the one of them going, you
right.
know, not the one of them.
Well, that was the interesting thing. I was, as I look at and I went back and revisited some of your stuff today, preparing for this, and and I've worked with a lot of wedding photographers, and they're good. I don't want to, but they take some very, very, very nice wedding photos, and I'm sure people are very happy with what they get. But your photos, honestly, the first thing I notice is the joy, the
Oh,
happiness, and I see
yeah,
that. It's not a pretend happy, or it's not an imitation happy. You catch people when they're absolutely joyful, and that's more art than skill. I think that's yeah, there's skill involved, and I don't see any stock photos. Some of the photographers I've worked with, they take people to the same place, they give them the
yeah.
same pose, get the same thing, and if you're doing it, I don't see it.
Well, and I think that's the thing is it's relationship, right?
Uh huh.
So relationship you have with your client is going to what's make the photo different. I can take them to the same place and the same lighting and the same pose, but they're not the same person.
Right.
And different, like I'll look at some couples and they might be uncomfortable in front of the camera and really nervous, but like prior to our portrait session part, I'll see that like when he kisses her forehead, it gives her a certain glimmer in her eye. So I'll tell her to do that. Where the other couple might be like, you want me to do what? So it's really understanding
Right.
where they are. And I mean, it's funny because I'll go back and look at the pictures I'm going to post on Instagram and I'll relive and look at the photos. And first off, sometimes I go, did I do that? Did I do that? How did that happen? And then a lot of times I'll be looking at it and I'll get happy and teary. Like I'll get like, oh, I loved that couple or look how happy they are. So if I can create that feeling for me, I hope that is the feeling that my couples get when they look at their photos over and over again. That it's not about the flash photography, which is now trending right now. It's not about the light and airy or the dark and moody or whatever style you want. The style is the emotion. That's the important part.
I think, and speaking as a guy who's been married for a very long time now, being able to go back and look at those pictures and seeing a happy couple that I barely recognize physically, uh,
Ah,
but I see that and I relive those days. But I also just remember how nervous I was, about how happy I was, excited that I was, and I see that. So regardless of what the style is today, right? You got to look at those things again in 20 years and 30 years and 40 years. If you're lucky enough like me,
yeah.
and so that's I think that's very important. I know that when I first started playing weddings, oh, so many years ago, and playing the people want pop music for their wedding, and I play it. I mean, that's what they asked me to do. Um, but you go back 30 years later or 25 years later at an anniversary, and you play that same song, and it's as dated as a pale blue tuxedo with a ruffled shirt.
So true. I hadn't thought about that. Some songs, will be classics, but some
Yep.
songs, oh, I'm just thinking of like someone who chooses like one of those weird 1980s like
Yeah.
Firehouse,
Yeah.
Love of a Lifetime type song.
Oh yeah. 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 If by Bread.
Oh yeah.
Color My
Yeah.
World by Chicago. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Played all of those.
Exactly.
Uh, and I mean, I had some fun with some of it, and some of the, as you know, some of the couples are just a ball. But but yeah, it's. I think there's nothing wrong with the classics. I would tell every groom, ever do like your bride does. She's going for a classic bridal dress, usually, you know, match it with a classic black tuxedo. Don't get
Oh,
cute.
I lost you there for a second.
Oops, I'm sorry. Are
There
you
we go.
back?
I'm back. I'm back.
Okay. I was going to say, if as long as your bride is being, is wearing a beautiful white dress, match it with a classic black tuxedo,
Yeah. Yeah.
or a business suit if you want, but don't get clever, and because at some point your kids are going to see those pictures,
Totally.
and
Totally. Or
and
at
it's
least
just,
have that a part of it. Like, have some classic traditionalists. And then
yeah.
if you want to get crazy at the reception, do something funky later.
I did a wedding up there once years ago, and the groom and the gentleman standing up with him were all wearing um, black tuxedos. But then I looked down, and the bride and the girls were all barefoot, and the groom and the men were all wearing black flip flops.
Ah,
So
that
now
works if it's on the beach.
it works.
Only if it's on the beach.
Yeah,
Sandy
yeah,
beach.
right, yeah. And this wasn't, but this was where was this? This was one of the hotels up, but not too far. But it's like the pictures aren't going to show that unless you want them to,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah,
and
totally.
so it's just not crazy, but just crazy enough. So that could
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's taking the tradition and just up leveling it and maybe mixing it with a little bit of extra modern stuff,
and
right? Just
making
the little things to show it different, but still keeping a level of elegance.
and making it your own. And elegance is the right word, I think. That's a good time in your life to be elegant.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
so
Elegant and fun. I'm all about elegance and fun and relaxed. How
yeah,
can you be like, I like the term barefoot luxury.
I've
It's a
never heard
name
that.
that
I
some people like. So the
like that
hotel
too.
I stayed at in Bali, that's their theme is kind of barefoot luxury. And I like that kind of concept.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I love it. I love it. So, well, let me ask you real quick. Like, you take these pictures. One of the nice things about using digital, of course, is you can take a million of the things, and uh, as opposed to film, which gets a little on the pricey side. But the film, the photographers that I knew back in the day used to be pretty proud of not only their ability to take a nice picture and compose a nice picture, but their darkroom skills as well. Now, we don't do that so much anymore. Kind of use Photoshop or some other program. How does that compare for you?
So I'm trying to see if I actually have my film camera here. You asked me if I do photography in Bali. My rule is if I go do a photo shoot, I take my film camera.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if you knew that when you asked this question.
I did not.
Um,
I had no idea.
so I grew up on film. I'm of that generation that I'm kind of the crossover. So I was the yearbook photographer. I did film. I did the dark room. I've got that smell of nostalgia when I smell those awful chemicals. Um, And then when my career started, I went digital all the way because you can't compare. Digital is just so much easier. And again, when you're really, the goal is to capture the emotion, the more you can shoot, the better. And also there's a mental, I think, when my ideal client is a person who's uncomfortable in front of the camera, the more they hear a click, the more they relax, the more they get used to, like, they can't pose for every photo. So they start to relax. And that's part of my secret tips to help get that true emotion photo, where with film you can't do that. But what I realized is when I start to do more film, first off, shooting film in Bali is so cheap to develop. Like, I can develop a roll of film for $6
Holy
with
mackerel.
print. Yeah. When I do it in America, it's like 40. um, but what I've come to realize that's been helping me with my digital is when I'm photographing and doing film in the winter, which, gosh, this makes me think I need to go do a photo shoot. Um, it makes me slow down. The thing with digital is you start to rush and you become formulaic and click, 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 done, 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 move on, move on, move on, move on, move on. You're not settling in. And, there's a level of superficiality that comes along with digital because you can move fast. You know how when you have an uncomfortable moment with someone and you push past that uncomfortable moment, it actually makes you closer.
Right.
You know what I'm that
Yeah,
kind
I know
of
exactly what you mean. I'm married. I get
so
it.
so with film, you have to sit there and people are not used to sitting still and it's uncomfortable, right? So when you're taking a film photo, you're having to tell your subject, don't move, hold still, which in a world that we live in today, people are constantly moving,
Right.
right? It's easy. It's easy. Um, so when it comes to film, you have to say, sit still. And it's uncomfortable for the photographer if you're used to digital to also be there. But it makes you soak into the moment, like really settle in and be there and connect and take the photo. And it also makes you focus more on everything else. You can't just rush and depend on mass quantities. It's quality over quantity versus quantity over quality. It's less of a ratio game, right? So your skill level really has to be there and understanding all the aspects of photography. So by me doing more film in the winter, when I start to pick up my digital camera again in the summer, I'm calmer. I know how to slow down a little bit. It's making me remember the true techniques that are needed in photography. And it's not about a preset. It's not about editing later in Photoshop. It's helping me get there in that moment and just take a breath. When things are rushing and weddings can be so chaotic, it's just another level of me to be able to calm the room and calm my couple as well. So the film aspect has not only been like a physical tool for me to use, but also a mental emotional tool to help me with my weddings as well, which I never would have imagined. You know, it's great. I
That's
love it.
funny. Now, I know you're not doing weddings, and you had mentioned like lifestyle and branding stuff. Are you doing any of that at all, or are you just kind of avoiding that?
No, not especially not here. I'll do it in America. I love doing it in America because I also love educating. I don't know if you know this, that I'm starting to become an educator and a business coach.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the branding, I love when I'm in an environment again where the people are just new and haven't had their first portrait session done and they get excited about seeing what their business looks like on paper.
Ah,
Where here in Bali, everybody here's a digital nomad and everybody here has been have branding shoots every week. So they're used to it. They know what they want. They don't have that same excitement,
gotcha,
right? Um, so when I get to do it in America, it's a lot more fun for me.
gotcha.
Here, I do a lot, like what I'm doing when I'm here is editing a little bit here and there, looking at the industry, seeing where the industry is going. I'm designing albums. A lot of my weddings right now are now wanting the album. So winter is product season and business building season. And then I'm also coaching people who want to be wedding photographers to show
Gotcha.
them, what are the psychological tips to help people take pretty photos and emotional photos and how to have a business that doesn't lead to burnout and it's
Well,
fun.
I know that you do a lot of that on Instagram. I see quite a bit of that, and so I guess I would urge anybody who is watching or listening to wander on over to your Instagram account and start following you over there because I know you're putting a lot of stuff out. So that's got to be pretty satisfying to be able to do that kind of stuff.
It's fun. You know what's fun is when someone asks a question, I'm sure you feel about this because you're an instructor and a teacher. It's fun to give knowledge.
Yes.
And when someone asks you a question and you're like, I know that answer, and I know my answer can help you. How did I get that answer? I guess I have been doing this for over 15 years. I guess that does say something.
Yeah, it's that realization, it's kind of an eye opener when it hits you. It's like, yeah, I not as dumb as I thought I was.
Yeah. And and you start to think that like, oh, doesn't everybody know this stuff? But then when I talk to a coaching client and they're like, well, what do I do? I'm like, oh, well, you just do this. Oh, that helps you. Oh, good. I can help you.
That's terrific. That's terrific. So, well, I come back to a question I asked a moment ago about darkroom versus Photoshop. Are you doing?
Yeah.
Do you get a chance to? Does that help you in your career at all, or in your product at all? Using that kind of digital manipulation to.
I am a true believer in I can do it if I have to. I do
Uh-huh.
Lightroom. So in
Uh,
fact, it's funny, on my Instagram live I just talked about, I was talking about the editing, the idea of what editing looks like.
okay.
Um, and I think I'm a true believer in your photos should be like we were kind of talking about, they should be timeless. And if you edit too much, that's not timeless. So I believe in reality plus a little bit, just a tiny little bit, like reality with a rainbow over it, reality with a little bit of sunshine thrown on. So when it comes to my editing and Photoshop, I am a minimalist. I'm not going to smooth skin. I'm not going to change reality because, I think there's a big push towards changing reality and not being happy and present with what the photos look in the moment. So when it comes to the Photoshop, I do a simple exposure and color correction. And the presets, I might brighten a little color here and there, but nothing that anyone would ever say that's edited. Because I think that's kind of an issue, and I could go on for hours about how I feel about filters. In fact, I think it's a really detriment to the psychology of everyone in our world right now. And then when you go back and look at the photos, you don't have a true reality of what it was like. You have
Right.
this picture of what you thought you were. So you might be, oh my God, I don't look like that anymore, but you never looked like that. Let's think about this, right? So you're mourning a thing that you actually weren't, you know?
That's funny. That's
So there's
funny.
a difference between a good photo of someone and a bad photo of someone. And
Sure.
that comes down to posing and as the photographer looks at the subject seeing. But let's be real about what the photos are and have the photo taken in a positive light to begin with, and then you don't have to tweak so much later.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, do the setup right, then you don't have to fix it later, kind of thing. I have
Yeah, that's old school thinking. That's where darkroom and film comes in.
uh, friends of mine, classical musicians, who will, when they record, they like to find a space that has wonderful natural reverb, and they'll get
Mm.
good quality recording equipment, and they'll go in and record that way. And when they're done, they don't have to add reverb. They don't have to do any compression. I mean, it's just what you hear is what they did. And the recordings are marvelous. They're alive. They're beautiful. They're stunning in so many different ways, and and for the most part, they don't even do a lot of cutting and editing. I mean, they play it pretty much all the way through. And if they don't, they start over and do it all over again. And
Yeah, yeah.
so not a lot of cutting. I'm really impressed with that. So I think it's probably similar to what you're talking about there. If you do it right the first time, you don't have to fix it. So,
And it saves you time and energy. And, when it comes to running a business and it comes to photography, there's so many different aspects of the career,
yeah,
right? That what is it that you love to do the most? For me, I love the people and I love the photos. So why I want to spend the least amount of time as possible behind the computer editing. So to do that, I get it right the first time,
there you go.
right?
That makes
Yeah.
sense. So, so now, how has the business changed, like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic?
Well, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, I think this year we're having a little bit of a I think we had a slingshot effect. I think COVID had pulled back a little bit and got smaller weddings. And then 2021, 2022, 2023 was the slingshot effect where all of a sudden there were tons of weddings, tons of people, tons of money, all the things. And now I think people are pulling back to reality and pulling back a little bit. But what I've actually found the biggest difference isn't the COVID. I'm changing your question on you.
Okay, bring it on.
Um, um, I don't feel like COVID has had a huge shift, especially because Mackinac Island was such its own little entity during COVID that a lot of people ran away and got married on Mackinac. So it had a bit of a bit of a effect, but not really, because Mackinac has always had small weddings.
Right.
And I think generally speaking around the world, maybe small weddings is what's changed after COVID, but Mackinac's always had that. And during COVID, so many people in Detroit, Chicago, all the big cities who couldn't get married because of the restrictions ran away to Mackinac and said, I want to get married anyways. Let's just do 10 people. Let's just do 20, which, as you know, has always kind of been the status quo.
That's a Mackinac thing, right?
That's a Mackinac thing. But what I've noticed this year, more than any year ever before, and I blame this thing for the first time, I'm blaming the phone. I had 6 clients who asked me, why is my sky not blue?
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, okay, 6, that's a lot. And it's because the phone, I don't know if I said this part, automatically with the new technology fills in a blue sky.
Oh,
So when you take a picture, it's going to think, oh, this is what they want. We're going to automatically make that sky bluer than
oh,
what your eye actually sees. So if you actually look outside, this is a kind of an example, kind of not, because it's a little overexposed. But if I were to look outside and see a blue sky, it's blue in my brain, but it's not necessarily a vivid blue.
right,
And also, what might be blue facing east might not be blue facing west.
right,
And what might be blue at 5 might not be blue at 3, even though your mind remembers a bright, sunny, blue sky day. And because the phones fill it out and they're getting all the pictures, I literally had to go in and kind of give photography lessons of it's not because the photo's wrong. It's that the refraction of the light and science and blah, blah, blah. And again, I've never, ever, 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 ever had to answer this question. And I had 6 clients this year ask me about blue skies
holy
specifically.
mackerel.
Yeah.
So,
Or I had people ask me about, why is this building faded here, but not here? And I'm like, because different camera, different lenses, it's apples and oranges. And again, in the past, people wouldn't necessarily notice or care. They would just accept it with the photo's the photo.
so popular technology is starting to change the nature of the event.
Yeah. And the nature of how people think about what a photo should look like, which
Wow.
is for better or for worse.
So that's got to be a little disconcerting.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
it's
So now
interesting as
it comes down to education. So, now I know for next year, this upcoming season, when I talk to my clients, I'm going to have to preemptively say, hey, just so you know, this is what might happen. Like I've always done this with the Mackinac Bridge. People are always like, we want to get the bridge in the background. And I'm going, okay, but let's tell you what this is really going to be like. What your eye sees is different than what the camera sees. And your brain messes with your eye and brings the bridge closer and bigger. In a camera, unless you have a certain lens and you're doing a certain thing and you have the perfect light, the bridge can look really small. So now I need to just leverage expectations about blue skies.
That's funny. So
I'm a straight.
how's your marketing approach changed over the last few years? Or has it?
Um, well, I always believe that the best marketing is word of mouth,
Uh-huh.
and the being on the vendor list is number one. So I've always been on the vendor list. I've always had a really good relationship with all the hotels that I work with and all the event planners. That's always number one. And then, they say that your best clients come from your best clients. So
Right.
I always hope that my best clients are referring me and using, I kind of continue keeping relationships. I've been doing a newsletter now once a week. That's number one. And then I feel like all the other aspects of marketing, social media, SEO, website, all of those are just, what's the word I'm thinking of? Legitimizers.
Oh,
They go, once they see you or hear you, they have to hear your name 3 times. So what are your 3 places that people can see and hear you? Right. So whether it's they're going to hear about me from the hotel, which is going to be one of the most valid references.
right.
Then they're going to Google, and then they're going to see me on SEO. And then they're going to go to my social media and go, oh, she's active. Right. So I like to focus most of my marketing on the word of mouth. That said, I do, as we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, I want to start doing a little bit of YouTube more. I want to do more video content, because that's again where the sharing of the information comes. And that's where people can see my personality more than just a photo, because just a photo really doesn't give me much. Anyone can take a pretty photo.
I, I don't know about that, but anyway.
Anyone can take one pretty photo. Someone might not be able to take, I think I made a list. Oh gosh, I can't remember how many it was. I did an inventory of how many photos I took this year. And I think it was like over 100,000 photos I took this year.
Wow. Wow. That's a photo or two. There you go. So
Yeah.
well, we will look for you on YouTube and other places, but in the meantime, I'm going to say thank you so much for being on the program. I so sincerely appreciate this.
Oh, it's so great to see you again, Roger.
And you too. See ya.
Bye.
As always, I really enjoyed hanging out with Andrejka, even if it was a half a world away. And thank you for spending that time with us. I hope you'll come back real soon to more episodes of Creative Conversations with Roger Humphrey.